And we're back after a brief break. You're watching Attorney Joe Flores. Thank you all so much for watching. Y a los que hablan nuestro idioma español, los recuerdo que regístrase a votar porque si no votas no puedes quejar después. If you don't vote and register and get involved in the process, you can't complain later. We're going to be thanking the Lopez family once again. Carlos Lopez, the Ted Turner of South Texas Broadcasting. Love you, guy. You make it all happen. Well, I promised you guys that I was going to have a great guest on, and we're going to have more from her in person. But right now we are talking to her, and she happens to be my sister, and she wrote a book that we're very proud of. And we're all very proud of her because she went to Yale and Stanford. And from humble beginnings, she's done so many great things. And this is Dr. Lori Flores. How are you, Dr. Flores? I like to say that.
Hi, Joe. Hi, brother. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. My brother Fred, who I'm very proud of, he's an ER nurse. He went to go see you. I saw the pictures on Facebook.
Right. Yeah, that was such a fun trip. We were able to meet up around the Times Square area of New York, and it was really great to see him.
Yeah, Times Square is a trip. I love the Disney store and all that. But yeah, there's some great pictures, and I'm glad you all got to see each other. And I wanted to do a little something to educate people. Let's talk about just before we get to the book. Tell us. I know where you were raised, but I want all my audience to know about your education, training, and background.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Alice, Texas, and went to Alice High School, graduated in 2001, and then from there I got accepted to Yale University, and so got my bachelor's degree in history there, met really wonderful professors who then encouraged me, to go to grad school, thinking, you can become a professional historian, you can read and write for a living, you can teach students about Mexican-American history, Latino history. So I went to Stanford and got my PhD in history, American history generally, but specialized in 20th century U.S., Mexican-American, and Latino history. So I got my doctorate in 2011 and then got my first job teaching up all the way in Maine at Bowdoin College, a very small liberal arts school. And then from there got the job I have now at the State University of New York at Stony Brook. So I've been doing that for the past 4 years and really love the students, the faculty. It's a great place to work. So I've had a really great network of people support me throughout my career and have gotten to see a lot of the country in the process. So I'm very happily working in New York right now.
There's a story I don't think I ever told you. Our father, we were out in the front yard there on Viegas Street in Alice, Texas, and he had told me that you had gotten accepted to Yale, and he said, "I'm not going to."
He was not happy about it.
He was not happy, and
he was
said,
not happy with me.
Yeah, he said if A&I and CCSU or A&M was good enough for us, it's good enough for her, and she's a daughter, and you don't let daughters go out into the world like that. And I just told him, "Come on," I said. You got to let her. But it wasn't me who convinced him. I think it was you all collectively together. Like when he got sick to get help, he wouldn't listen to me, so I squealed to your mom, and everybody waited, and y'all ganged up on him at home. What my wife can't get me to do, if my daughter puts her foot down, I listen. So I think y'all. So when you went to go study, what motivated you to study Mexican American? And this is also this book that we're going to get to in a minute. It's also, I believe, about the farm workers and immigrants and everything combined. And what motivated you to study Mexican American studies and become a historian in this manner?
Yeah, well, it's funny that you bring up that story in the front yard. I think it was really. Thank you for telling him that you should let me go to Yale. But it was really hard to just go to Yale and be brave and leave home and never, have had any experience leaving home before. I think I went to Yale, wondering what I was going to do with my life. And at first I was an English major because I really loved to write and to read, and quickly found out that English wasn't the field for me. So I, was looking around for classes and found this history class called The History of Mexican Americans in the U.S. And, being Mexican American, but not having learned a lot about my own history, only through stories that our dad used to tell us about his childhood growing up in rural South Texas on a farm. I was curious about learning more about myself, about our dad, about our family history, about, Mexican American people in general in the United States. So I took that lecture course with Professor Stephen Pitty, who still is teaching at Yale University, and I just fell in love with the subject matter. It was just so fascinating to me how, in the way that we were taught traditional American history, that a lot of the time Latinos or people of Mexican descent were just totally forgotten or left out of the traditional narratives, except for the Mexican-American War or, the Battle of the Alamo. I really did not know much beyond that when it came to the history of Latinos in the U.S. So what that class did was really open me up to how much more there was to know about the Mexican-American experience in Texas, in the Southwest, all across the country. And working more with Professor Pitty, I came to be really passionate about telling more of those stories of the Latino working class, of Mexican-American men and women. And I wrote my senior thesis on garment workers, Mexican-American garment workers in San Antonio. And then that thesis eventually became one of my very first professional articles. And so I went to graduate school really motivated to write some really good Mexican-American history and the history of the working class, specifically farm workers. And so my advisor at Stanford encouraged me to look to California and the fields of California to do an original historical study about the lives of Latino farm workers, both citizen and immigrant, in California. So that's basically how my interest came about in this area, and how this book came about is because, of that one class in college that really changed my view on not only what I thought about American history, but what I thought I was going to do with the rest of my career. It was really life-changing.
Well, and I personally want to thank you, because I think that in our own small way here in Corpus, David Mendez, who's behind the camera right now, and I have tried to document a lot of the experiences for Mexican Americans and our own thoughts and beliefs. I think you're right. When this became America, quote unquote, the history that was recorded was really many of the experiences and the value and the contribution of Mexican Americans were forgotten, particularly veterans and other people that came from humble beginnings, and it's just sort of taken for granted. And we have Roy Benavides and other war heroes, but I think the farm worker, as our father was, worked on a farm and raised cattle and had horses and all these things. Are there some similarities and disparities between your studies of Texas and California? In your book, and the title of the book for the people out there who want to read it, what is the title of your book?
So the title of the book is Grounds for Dreaming, Mexican Americans, Mexican Immigrants, and the California Farm Worker Movement. I
just got my copy on Amazon. I love it.
Thank you so much. Yes, yeah, it's available on Amazon. It's available on BarnesandNoble.com and other bookseller websites too, along with Yale Press. And it was great that I was able to publish with Yale, my old school. So I'm really happy about that.
Well, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I guess it was a bad question. When you studied Mexican American culture and you're a historian in this, it must be all over the map, because we've got Michigan Mexicans, we've got California Mexicans, we've got Illinoisans, we've got California, Texas, Oklahoma. I mean, everybody everywhere. How do you harness all that information and document it and get all that data down and make it right?
Yeah, no, it's a great question actually, and it's one that I had to deal with all the time in writing this book. How do you make Mexican American history speak to lots of people at the same time that you're zooming in on a particular region or community and trying to tell the story of those local people. I think that's always a tension that historians have to work with. And I think what we can say in common, about the Mexican American experience is that, Mexican Americans in the United States did suffer from a lot of marginalization, not only as racial minorities in the United States, but also as a people that over time just kept on getting, relegated to these working class occupations, such as farm work, such as low-wage factory work in cities, and especially with these continuing waves of immigration from Mexico and other parts of Latin America, this idea that Latinos were somehow more foreign than other Americans in the United States, even if they were citizens, even if they were born and raised in the United States, this kind of conflation between them and immigrants has always been this continuous obstacle for the Latino community. Other people, feeling like they are somehow less American is always something that, everyone has had to battle in terms of civil rights veterans. Dr. Hector P. Garcia, in founding the American GI Forum in Corpus, that whole organization was formed because of the injustices against Latino veterans who went and fought for their country in World War II and in Korea and in Vietnam, but then felt when they returned home, they were not gaining the same equality and social treatment as other, Americans. And so all of this is wrapped up in a common history of feeling like, we haven't been treated as if we've belonged, ever since the beginning, ever since the integration of the southwestern states into the United States after 1848. And when it comes to specific histories, then that is where historians have to look at a specific community and then see, well, what about this community is unique or different, or maybe how does the story change if we zoom in on a local level versus the big history of Mexican Americans.
Well, it's a great approach, and it's a great point that you make. I think the way you put it, a lot of people can't put their finger on it, but I think the 800-pound gorilla in the room is that you feel less American. When I went to school, law school, and I kind of had your experience in a different way, but not over 90% of my class were white, and many from East Texas and North Texas. So really, I had never been inundated with so many racial slurs and ethnic slurs. And I'm not perfect, I too have contributed to some of that a little bit when I look at my white counterparts, and we had some tension, but I made a lot of great friends and I learned a lot. Like so many students that go away and study in a different place and are Mexican American, you kind of see how these people have the stereotypes of you, and they see themselves as Texans, but Mexicans are Mexicans. And I think that's the very dangerous thing that some politicians that want to aspire to lead are bringing about when they hit immigration. I don't think a lot of Mexican Americans realize that a lot of white people and a lot of groups will say a Mexican is a Mexican is a Mexican, and they just see the last name and right away. I think that what you're saying is right. I mean, I think for many, many years we've been marginalized and relegated, and it was people like Hector P. Garcia, and now yourself, through your book and the education and what we're going to educate people on through your interview, and then we're going to go have your book signing filmed coming up here in South Texas. But at the same time, I don't think that we, as you're kind of putting out, it's a positive message you're putting out. I don't want to have a chip on my shoulder. In fact, I'm very proud about being a Mexican American. I think our parents instilled that in us. So can you tell me a little bit about when you were writing this, about thinking about our father, our grandfather, the stories that you heard? How much of an influence did it have when you were writing this book?
It had a huge influence on the writing of this book, whether, I recognized it consciously or subconsciously. I think, at the kitchen table with, our dad telling these stories of how, growing up in rural Texas on a farm, having to deal with neighboring farmers who may have treated them as less than, just because of their racial status. All the discrimination that he experienced growing up. I remember one story he told about how he went inside of a restaurant to eat, and they made him sit in the kitchen, in the back of the kitchen, along with the African-American cooks. And so he wasn't allowed to eat in that particular, main part of the restaurant just because he was darker skinned, just because he was Mexican. And this was, the going custom. Outside, there would be signs on restaurants saying no dogs or Mexicans allowed in this establishment. So at the same time that we had Jim Crow against African Americans in the South, we were also having what historians call Primet Crow, this kind of segregation and discrimination against people of Mexican descent in the Southwest. So I think those stories that our father told us stuck with me somehow, and then when I learned more about them in school, I think they just became all the more important for me to speak out about and write about and teach my students about. I will bring up our dad when I lecture about some of these things because it makes them realize, this history hasn't gone away. This history is still embedded within families, in South Texas and at other parts of the U.S. People still carry these stories with them. People are still experiencing the same kind of discrimination today. It may just be in less overt ways. It may be in more subtle ways that people still feel this outsider status.
Right, and they feel this sense of alienation. I think part of this program is to tell people you're not going to change being a Mexican American. I'm a lot less. I'm a guy. I'm rough and tumble trial lawyer. We're so far apart in many ways, Lori. But I always tell people, and it's kind of rough sounding, but I always tell people, keep scrubbing. It'll never come off. Be proud of who you are. If you're brown, stick around, because, and I think only in the last few years when we decided the history of an election, when Mexican Americans, and a lot of people think Cubans run things or all this, and I think we're the vast majority of Latinos in America or Mexican Americans. And I think that people don't understand that, and they want to put us all in the same, box. And there's a sense of pride that I'm glad you differentiated the Mexican experience. And you're right, when our dad told me that, there was things that I grew up, we're 15 years apart in age, and I was there when you were born. And I remember you coming home, and I went to go see you all, and my dad was so proud. He'd never had a little girl before, so it was over. He was in love. And, you were his pride and joy. I still have that picture of him with his hat and sunglasses with you and your sister Gina, our sister. And I think that some of the stories he told me, too, were that, along with that prejudice, there was also hope because he was very fluent in English, Spanish, and he was the smartest 8th grade dropout, when he graduated 8th grade, and for years when he went back, it was because of politics, I think, and also because of the same people that may have made him eat in the kitchen that helped him get to school at A&I, now A&M Kingsville, and got him to get his bachelor's degree. I remember when he was studying, and when he graduated, I was 6 years old in 1975. And we were so proud of that. And I think that is what was really the seed that really put a lot of us to go back to school and get what we wanted out of it. And we're so very proud of you. Tell me a little bit about why you're doing the book signing. I know I saw some Facebook comments. Well, what other cities in Texas, Why Alice, Why Alice? You could be in Dallas and Houston. Alice, Texas, people are going to go, I'm not driving to Alice. That's why I want to record this, so they can share that. They may not want to drive to Alice, Texas, but they're going to see it in the comfort of their home. Yeah. I live in Corpus. I go to Alice once a month, and,
right.
but But I think it's all where it came from, and I want everybody, all your friends and everybody, I talk too much, but I wanted them to hear from you. So why Alice?
Well, Alice has a special place in my heart as home, and also, as a place that helped me, become who I am. We're all shaped by where we grow up. We're all shaped by the people we know in our lives. And so while it's not, a big or central city in Texas that people can get to easily, will be really, really happy to see people who I had, a lot of my early history play out with, like former teachers, my classmates, my family, of course. That's all pretty much very local. It's going to be really cool to be able to go back home for the holidays and be able to share this big milestone in my life with people who knew me since I was really young. So it's special to me for those reasons, and also because I want the spirit of our father to kind of be in the room. I think, I'm just immensely proud of his story of going back to school in his 30s and getting his degree and becoming a teacher for so many years in the town of Robstown. And I just, I feel like his spirit will be there somehow with us in the library, with the book signing taking place on Saturday the 19th. I think it'll be special.
Well, I agree, and I want Dave to be there, and it'll be a part of this, sort of like a mini documentary, and a lot of the self-deprecation and recrimination that we have as Mexican Americans, not being good enough, or that's why Dave and I long ago said, well, you know what? There's no media out there in South Texas that truly doesn't have a corporate master or an Anglo message that overtones our unfiltered things. People have come up to me and said, you are a radical. And I said, I'm a radical because I'm not, being a messenger boy for you. And we're bringing on our own message in English and Spanish. And so we're doing our own thing. And I think it bothers a lot of people that, that especially with this immigration thing, they're going on and on, but it's a love-hate relationship of the worst kind in America. Every 20 years, Reagan fell in love with Mexicans and let them come in. And then 20 years later, oh no. But, I always tell people, who do you think rebuilt New Orleans? And
Right.
and I'd love to talk to you because of my experiences the last 10 years representing immigrants, undocumented workers that have come in through the federal system, and how unfair and unfeeling and how it's ripped families apart. I always tell people as a lawyer, if we didn't have the highest demand for cocaine and marijuana on the planet, and if we didn't have the highest demand for cheap labor and turn our own unions, and CEOs decided to farm out everything, we wouldn't have this problem, and we'd tighten up our borders. But yet, at the same time, I've never seen the CEO from Tyson or Walmart standing in chains alongside all of the illegal, as they call them, undocumented workers that are being imprisoned in these private prisons in America when they cross across that border and try to help their families.
Right.
In my own thing, I remind myself as a lawyer of our father and how some things still have not changed at all. So I'm
Right.
glad you're coming back home and bringing the message back home. We're going to be interviewing you, Dave is, and getting pictures and just, something for you. I wanted to make this for you to have. And we're going to put some of our father in it and for you to share. And since you are a historian, to share maybe perhaps with some of your classes and let them know, how things are down here. And but what is the main, in the next 5 years, where do you see yourself as far as teaching and as far as being a historian and spreading the message that you're so passionate about?
Well, I think for the next 5 years, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm going to keep teaching at Stony Brook, where students here in New York really need to learn more about, the Latino experience, not only here on the East Coast, but all over the country. I think what I'm doing is exposing our students to a wider world, and that's what college is supposed to be, and I'm happy I can do that for them. And, I want to keep, touring and talking about this book. I think it's really important for people to know more about why, like you said, why does our world look the way that it does? Why has history repeated itself so many times with things like the immigration crisis? The United States has always had an immigration crisis, but it's been because, like you said, we've always had a demand for immigrant labor. So explaining to people why, what we're going through now makes sense, considering the mistakes we've made in the past. It will allow us to see what we can better do to correct in the future and to provide solutions for the future. And so, that's why I love your message. Go out and vote. If you have the privilege and the right to vote, have a say in what our future national leadership looks like. Have a say in what our nation moves forward in doing, because, that's our right as people who can vote. And Latinos need to do that more than ever, I think. We helped get, John F. Kennedy into office. We helped get Obama into office in 2008. So there's no reason why we can't have that same power again. We just need to exercise it. And so for the next 2 years, I'm just going to keep on, doing my work and trying to do it well and connecting with more people around these issues of immigration, labor, and social justice.
Well, and lastly, and most importantly, I wanted to give a big shout out to your mom, Mary.
Yes.
Because she's just amazing. I think the sacrifices that Latino or Mexican American women, the mothers, do for daughters and sons, and we take it all so much for granted, and we challenge them growing up, and then we have many laments and regrets and say, I wish I had done it differently,
Right. Did I lose you? Are you still there?
Yeah, he's still here.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
We're good.
Yeah, my mother is just absolutely one of the most important people, in my life, and she has always supported me in her own ways. So I'm forever grateful to her for just letting me live the life that I want to and supporting me and loving me, through all of the changes I've made in my journey. I think she's one of the strongest people I know.
I remember one time, towards the end of my dad's life, we all went out to go eat at a Kingsville restaurant, and this stuff you can't make up, right? Mary was so used to, Mom was so used to really, she loved him so much, she catered to him almost. It's almost alien to us now. I mean, I love my wife, but if she treated me like Mary treated our dad, I would be like, are you okay, honey? Did somebody put something in your Cheerios, But it was just the way. And you said, it's okay, he can get some of this stuff himself. You kind of lightly said it, but it was a very traditional Mexican background. And, and like many Mexican American males in our society, they married more than once, and so it was like when I met our brother's his first wife, I was just amazed. We sat down and we actually did farm work together. Oh God, I was so mad. Everybody else is watching MTV and smoking marijuana and having a good time, and my dad said, "No, you're going to get up at 7, and we're going to go over there and we're going to go pick watermelons." And I was like, "You're a teacher. Why are we going over here every summer? It's 105. I'm an honor student and everything, and I want to work." And that's why I ran to a hospital, because they had air conditioning, and I'll owe him the rest of my life. I went to college because I hated the heat, and he made me, 100 pounds ago, I could lift the back of a Ford because we were picking up 30, 40, 50-pound watermelons all the time, and he took us to that area. And the guy that was working there, Walter Storm, he was an Irishman who could speak fluent Spanish. And he was a good friend of Dad's, but we knew who the boss was and who wasn't, but he got along with my dad really well, our dad. And I always say my dad because I've never had a family member interviewed. Our dad, because I talk about him all the time. And I remember that there was some racism. Somebody said something so ugly to my dad, our dad, that I assaulted this guy. He was an Irish American guy named Patrick. Sorry, Patrick, that I assaulted you. But I got so mad, it was almost instinctive. I decked him one, and he falls into a pile of rotting watermelons on a platform 10 feet below. And, you know, this was the 80s, right? And my dad said, "What did you do that for? We're going to get fired." And I said, "Well, nobody talks to you like that." And I think that was the proudest moment. He was so proud of me. Like, he was like, wow, you know. So when we worked there, I saw and firsthand the racism, the experience, all of it. And for that, I think that was a rare sort of experience that I'll always have. I kind of get a little choked up sometimes when I think about it, but what are you going to do, right?
Well, you got to do what, you know, you got to be the next generation who tries to make things more equal, right? I think that's what both of us are trying to do in our own ways.
Yeah, I agree, you know, and our brother that works in the emergency room, my mom, who worked tirelessly in a hospital as a nurse's aide and a seamstress, and then she went to study catching a bus to become an RN at Del Mar. And now she's 76. Sorry, Mom, for everybody out there to figure it out, we have different mothers, Dr. Flores and I, you know, but my mom was from the same town. And she she went back to school and she was 45. I think my father influenced her to go do her own thing too. And she became an RN when she was 45, and now at 76, you know, she wants me to tell everybody she's 59 every year. And
well,
of course, and she just retired as an RN. So I think that what you're doing, documenting this experience, we really want to help you because it's a message that it just brings out so much emotion and so much passion, and makes me want to do what I do even more. You inspire me to do it even more.
Well, thank you so much for supporting the book. And I think even though my book is about California, it really does speak to the Mexican-American experience in Texas as well. So I think there's something for everyone in the book who's interested in the issues of today, but also trying to understand more about, like, where do we come from? Where is our family history rooted in, and what kind of experiences did our parents have, our grandparents, our ancestors? I think it's really important for everyone to know that.
Well, and we've got about a minute left, but I wanted to tell you really quickly that your niece, Vanessa, my daughter, she did her PowerPoint presentation on Yale because of you.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that is so awesome.
In 5th grade, she did her own PowerPoint presentation, and she knows all about Yale. And she tells everybody that her aunt went to Yale.
Well, you know, she would make a really good Yaley, I think.
Well, my wife said, my wife's and my dad and our dad should have. I told them, you guys should rent an island together. You should have, because they got along so well, because they're so old school. Sorry, Priscilla, but Priscilla said she's not going anywhere. She's not going to no Yale. At the most, Austin, you know. So we got about 30 seconds left. When can people come and see you? That's let me see. December 19th at the Alice Public Library, 1 to 4.
1 to 4 p.m. Yes, I will be there. Okay. I hope to see you there.
And if you can't make it, I hate to date my shows, we're going to play this again and again, and you're going to get to meet her in person, not just by the phone and this tinny sound. So we're out of time. This is Joe Flores. Los quiero mucho. Un fuerte abrazo a todos aquí en sur de Texas y en todo el mundo. Bem-vindo, mis amigos que falan portugués y que parlan, no, how would you say that? I'm trying to take a little French too. Mes amis qui parlent le français aussi. There you go. All right. So anyway, we're out of time. Thank you, and God bless.